Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Thanks for listening in again. This is part 2 of my interview with Sir Steven Wilkinson from goodandprosper.com. If you missed the first part, check out the Small Business Banter podcast. We pick up now where Sir Steven is just about to start talking about the lost opportunities for small business owners in not tracking the value of their business the same way they do their house and their other investments.
Which is extraordinary, isn't it? Because they're fascinated by something they can't control, but they ignore the one thing that they really could control and where they have absolute freedom to determine the outcomes. And that one portion of their portfolio should be or could be outstripping the returns on the rest of their capital by factors of 10, 15, 20 compounded over time.
With your hands on the controls. And if it's not performing, well, you can offload it. You've got so much control. And I think early days, you and I shared some analysis from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which painted and it was the typical Australian family balance sheet. Completely dominated by property and managed investments, and I think by those calcs, the value of there's a lot of factors here at play, but what was really kind of jarring was that unincorporated or let's call them small businesses came in at I think 7% of the typical Australian family balance sheet, just below. Furniture and fittings and artworks at 8%, and I did that quick and dirty analysis. We talked about it, and I to this day, that was 2014. Those numbers, it just makes me. It highlights the need for this financial education you talk about, but also the missed opportunity for business owners to get more of a return and to approach their businesses like it's an investment like any other business and drive the returns. So
I thought a lot about that because I thought it was such a great piece of work that you did around the aggregate balance sheets and the typical household. If I can share with you a seminal study that radically changed my view of the importance of this work, was done. It was one of the only studies that's been done for a very large cross-section of small businesses. It was done it's been done twice now. It's once between 2009 and 2016, and then there was another one done from 16 to 21 or 20. Looking at the returns of a large universe of small businesses defined as having under 250 employees or maximum of 50 million in turnover, and at the bottom end, I think 500,000 and more than one employee. So it was, a broad spectrum of what is generally defined as being a small business. And they ranked the businesses by their 5-year operating profit margin, or EBIT. And the results were, and then they grouped them into industry groups. And the results were absolutely mind-bogglingly shocking. And that was that the average for the entire universe operating profit margin was 2.7% for the entire range.
Yeah.
The top 10% were at least in every industry group 7 times that of the average, so including themselves. So you were looking at the top 10% were taking something like 66 to 70% of the entire value created in each industry group. And the top 30% were taking all of it, which meant that the bottom 70% were either breaking even or losing money. So the top 10% were taking 66.
Or not properly reporting. Yeah.
Or were taking 66, or 2/3 of the value created in every single industry category, every single one, was being taken by the top 10%. And when you ask the top 10% what they believe their sort of secret of their success was, it was almost uniform. Number one, they had a very, very clear focus on who their clients were and what problem they were solving for them. So they were ruthlessly focused on their niche or their specific sector of their market, and went very deeply into relationships with their clients, which allowed them to price and extract value that they were genuinely giving to those clients. Number one. Number two, they were relentlessly focused on their financial performance. So they benchmarked. They had very clear ideas of what sort of margins they should be working at, and they worked relentlessly and all the time to maximize those financial returns and to be financially sound. They had strong balance sheets, good margins that they were actively and deliberately working towards. And the third thing was that they had a very clear vision of where they were going. They had a sort of 3, 5, 7-year vision of where the business was going and what it was going to look like. And those three things together, they all speak to a high degree of deliberation. It was all intentional. They were intentional about what they were doing and where they were focusing their energies. They were intentional about managing their financials, and they were intentional about where they were going. And our friend Mike Finger talks often about this idea of intent. You've got to want to be deliberate, rather than living in this Groundhog Day of hoping that sometime you're going to get out of it, but actually every day being almost exactly the same as every other day.
Yeah. And you're right, Mike. Mike Finger was on recently from Exit Oasis, and just hammers those points, day in, day out, because it works and it makes sense. And it is interesting. It also points to the possibility that within those whatever sectors there's high performing businesses and there's a lot of laggards, and so those three reasons you just pointed out can be the difference, and they're achievable. It's not like you need, necessarily to be a rocket scientist or necessarily need millions of dollars of investment. It's kind of, as you say, intentional to drive the investment in your small business.
The conclusion that I drew from that study, Michael, was very simple, and that is that there is no sector of economic activity in which the returns to competence are higher than in the small business area. In other words, if you can make marginal improvements in your competence in those three areas, financial fluency, strategic focus, and medium-term vision or intention, if you can make incremental improvements in those, the returns to those incremental improvements are gigantic.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? Because
really exciting. It doesn't take much to move the needle dramatically.
Yeah. Vision and strategy. in kind of one corner, and then measuring, the effectiveness of implementing that strategy towards that vision. So
yeah. If you want to talk that in non sort of consultant terms, then the strategy is what you're doing, the vision is where you're going with that, and the operational sort of excellence is how you do it along the way, which is your financial intelligence and your operational efficiency.
Yeah, and I think that that we go back to that one of the very first points. If you look at your numbers, look at your financials, circle the things you don't understand. If there's a lot, it's a good start. And then I'd probably take that further. I see this all the time where, and it's not to have a crack at accountants or tax advisors, because that's all a key part of it. But there's more to the numbers. What you need to submit for, compliance and to the tax authority in your, wherever you're operating, is a slimmed down version, and it might only be 15 or 20 items. The contrast comes often when the chart of accounts and the management accounts that are used to formulate the tax returns often has a lot more detail. It has, instead of rolling up all your revenue into sales on your tax return, your management account might tell you, you've got 15 different types of revenue or 4 different types of revenues coming from wholesale or online or retail. So those management accounts can tell a very, much more rich story. And I just encourage owners and implore them to really understand, set those management accounts up, the chart of accounts up properly, so it gives you that, that real feedback on how the business, is tracking to where you want it to go. So I think it's probably a good opportunity to just talk a little bit more, Steven, about I guess the financial education. How do we encourage, and where do we encourage owners to go to start to think about, doing a better job of understanding their numbers? Is it to accountants? I know there's a bit of a DIY, do-it-yourself opportunity here, but where would you encourage owners? And can you talk a little bit about some of the courses that you've been running, I think, in the US and the UK?
Yeah, very gladly. There are almost as many books on accounting for business as there are books on personal development. The list is endless, and there are some good ones, and there's some less good ones. And the good ones, even the good ones, they, when I pick them up and read them, even the ones that are trying really hard to ease people into this sort of mindset of accounting, within about 2 pages, they're already making some basic assumptions about the mental model, that if you don't have that mental model, you're lost. You don't even have to start talking about debits and credits, which is where most people start sort of getting fuzzy-brained. There is a mental model that people who understand this stuff assume their counterparts or their readers have, that is just not true. So most people stop reading a book on finance, and there are some really good ones. There's one called Financial Intelligence, which is it's a wonderfully written book, but it's based on to use a fancy word, primary heuristic. In other words, a mental model that they assume is in place, that you have to make sense of everything from step 0 onwards. And what I've discovered is that there are lots of entrepreneurs who admit to me and say, when I just look at this stuff, my brain goes blank. My mind just goes blank. I look at it and I just get, my eyes glaze over, and I don't even know where to start looking. And that's where I started. I started to say, why does that happen? What does our brain do to us when we're confronted with sort of complex information? And that's been really interesting, because what happens is your brain has like a bouncer at the door. And if you come
Yeah.
with a sort of great group of people, lots of information that it doesn't know what to do with and doesn't trust, your brain will say, you're not coming in. It's that simple. Unless
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
you've got a
Yeah.
reservation and that you're going to that table and we know what to do with you, you're not coming in. And that's when you've experienced this sort of mind shutting down, because it really is, because our brain processes so much or takes so much energy. We are constantly looking for shortcuts. We're constantly looking to preserve energy in our brain because of our total energy consumption in our, for our bodies. About, I don't know, 60% of it is taken by thinking. This sort of huge engine we've got at the top of our bodies. And our brain will not allow us to embark on energy consuming activities, the benefit of which it can't calculate. So if you're presented with financial information and you don't know what to do with it, you don't have a mental model that says very quickly, oh yeah, that's important, that's not important, that's where I need to be looking, that's the number that I've got. If you don't have any of that, then your brain will just say, forget it. Go home, do some work, bring me
Yeah.
a model. So what you need to do is you need to
Or a
go.
dashboard, maybe in everyday talk, it might be a simple dashboard that
Well,
of things that really you tune in.
in my own belief, is that you can't construct a dashboard until you've understood the absolute basic first principles, because you don't know what's
Agree. Yeah.
important. So you need to
Correct.
go back
Yeah.
to absolutely first principles and go right back to the beginning and build that mental model up from scratch. And I have learned
Yeah.
I can do that. There are people who will teach you dashboards and they will teach you sort of the complexities of finance far better than I can. But I can teach you to start from scratch and build a mental model that is not accountancy based, but it's business based, and that makes
Yeah.
sense for entrepreneurs. And it really does require going right back to the beginning, forgetting everything you know, and sort of coming in an organized party to the bouncer and saying, I've got a ticket, I know where I'm going. And the bouncer says, off you go, sir, and you go and have fun.
Yeah. Okay. So, that's like obviously an underlying principle, philosophy for the way you educate. What are some of those, the specifics of some of the courses that you or programs that you've been involved with?
Well, I've got 3 programs, and the one that I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
concentrating on most intensely at the moment is the basic one, because I've realized that that's where my mission
Right.
is. And I call it financial fluency at practitioner level. And I've experimented with sort of a 10-week course. I've experimented with a 1-month intense course. I've experimented with sort of weekend courses. And what I'm doing in the sort of classic Saint-Exupéry engineering way is just cutting stuff out every single time and stripping it right down to its basics.
Yeah.
So I reckon I can teach somebody the basics of finance in 3 to 4 hours, if they are prepared to just let go of all the stuff that they think they know, and let me lead them through a program that effectively, and I've got this little heuristic that I say, the whole point of business finance, the secret of it, is understanding that it's turning money into things and things back into money again. And the money into things is the balance sheet, and the things back into money again is the P&L. And basically, that's the story that numbers are telling.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. No, that's. I look forward to sharing something about that. There's a very big gap, and I think an overall fear about anything finance related. And there's sort of lack of awareness of what's possible. So I think we're concluding that there's a lot riding on your business, and taking a more proactive approach can really set you apart from your competitors or your industry, and also set you up for for greater success. I think you call that confident capitalism, Stephen.
I do, and it's a sort of I'm being a bit cheeky when I use the word confident capitalist, because I know that it's a provocative term, but I really do believe that the existence of the free market and the ability to fulfill your potential in a voluntary, value-creating way, which is at the very heart of what should be the capitalist system, this ability to take your talent, mix it with some capital and your work, and then create value from which you can then, profit for yourself, create a good living, make livings for others, it's an amazing system, and it's delivered more benefits than any other system we've ever come up with. And being confident in your role as an entrepreneur stroke capitalist is at the very heart of playing the game properly. And what I want to do is to help people be really confident in their roles as sort of micro capitalists, because if they learn how to play the game, then they can make the game work for them rather than capturing them.
Yeah. And I think within capitalism, the small business economy, I can speak from a lot of experience in Australia, and you might guide me here, on the US and the UK, but that's where that ability to express yourself and to change your financial world, by having your hands on the lever of a small business, it's always it's long been held up as a dream and often turns into a nightmare because people are under-invested, under-skilled, whatever. But I think we're just saying that there's a way forward through financial fluency. We're coming up to the end, unfortunately, but I just did want to, I guess, leap to what else that does beyond just helping owners to become more successful in their business. And I think it's in terms of the areas around, and I know you're aware of the importance of not-for-profit social enterprises in the broader economy, and also cooperatives and mutuals. As I think if we can kind of better represent through a story what a small business is, they become more investable, more bankable for and therefore more of an option for traditional not-for-profits and social enterprises to enter into something that they can keep the levers on and generate their own independent financial returns, because it's so competitive trying to get government support or donor support. So and also with regional economies, and we do go out to a regional audience here. Small businesses are really capitalism in town. Like that's the only big businesses aren't there, and so if we can kind of cement and transition small businesses by making them more viable through financial fluency, it goes way beyond the business to that entire regional community, to preserve it through having viable small businesses. So I think we're really on to exciting times ahead, because small business most definitely is going to be the opportunity for individuals and communities and larger not-for-profit social enterprises to really consolidate and be more successful. So, Steven, you mentioned a couple of things. The Great Game of Business. You're obviously a fan of that. Where do people go to? They search up Great Game of Business, I'm assuming, as a resource that you'd encourage.
Greatgame.com.
Yeah,
they will.
Your website,
please,
is
goodandprosper.com.
I strongly endorse. Yeah, love. I've been now reading them for heavily for the last 4 to 5 months since we first got introduced, and they're thoroughly enjoyable, but also thoroughly educational and eye-opening. So thank you so much for spending some time with me here on Small Business Banter. We might revisit this discussion later in 2022. I'm particularly keen as you undertake to kind of expand the audience for your owner financial fluency courses to promote that here, because especially with a regional audience, it's we need more of that.
I would love to do that. I have a small sort of group of people from Australia who have expressed an interest, and I've said that when we have a sort of large enough audience to do a course, I would absolutely love to do one. I've now found the ideal time to do that, which is early in my morning and later on in your afternoon, to get the timing right. It's great. It's my best time of the day, so and an unusual one to have a course. And so I'd love to do that.
Yeah, look, that's terrific. It's a good note to end on. Again, Sir Steven Wilkinson, founder of Good and Prosper, thank you very much for your time and interest today on Small Business Banter Radio and Podcast.
And good luck and a very happy Christmas to everybody.
I hope you enjoyed that excellent discussion with Steven Wilkinson, a global leader in SME business owner education. The full interview will be available on the Small Business Banter podcast in the next week. So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.